Today on the show, you and I discuss the initiative to decriminalize homosexuality around the globe and who surprisingly has a problem with it.
Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so
I just don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't get the self-defeating side taking that happens in this country. I don't get the determination that if somebody that voted differently than you says the sky is blue, you will swear it was chartreuse. I don't understand it. I don't understand how we as a nation, we as a society, we as a people can function when we are so pig-headedly obstinate to the point of self-destruction. I don't get it. Do not understand it. Now, let's just clear this up. I mean, we've done this lots of times on the show, but for the sake of context on this one, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I'm not a fan of the idea of a man who behaves the way he does, being in any kind of political power, let alone the highest office in the world. The way he carries himself, the way he acts, the way he tweets, let's be real here, is very often beneath the office of the president. So let's just get that one out of the way. Like I said, for the sake of context. But I don't understand why a win for all of us, a win for humanity, a win for what is right can't be a win for what is right. You may or may not know where I'm going with this one, but again, for context, if you've listened to the show for any length of time, you know that equality is sort of really, the underlying theme of everything. I think that we all want the same stuff, whether we vote left or vote right or subscribe to one ideology or another. We all want the same things in America. These things are universal. We want a roof over our heads. We want a job that pays for that roof over our heads. We want that work that we do to be meaningful. We want, if we have children, for them to have a real shot at an education and a life and all of these things. That's what we want. We just have different ideas of how to get there. So if we can actually, come together, have a conversation like I like to have us do on this show, gather as many different types of people with many different beliefs as possible in one place, we can, maybe share some ideas, learn something from one another, and get there faster. That I get, that I understand. But there is just this determination to infight to the point where we are self-destructive, to the point where we are destructive to humanity. But the idea of equality is so important to me. The idea that somebody could be treated like less than because of the color of their skin. The idea that someone could be treated like they were less than because of who they love, because of their sexuality, because of their gender, because of any of these things. The idea that someone could not be afforded the same opportunities and shot at a happy life because of any of these things is an affront to me, and I hope it's an affront to you. Equality, I guess, is really at the core of everything that we're talking about here on this show, 9 days out of 10. And when there is inequality, when there is, even worse, persecution because of any of these things, the color of someone's skin, who they love, their gender, their sexuality. Well, anyone that wants to stand against that, I feel like I want to stand next to them. Does that make me a cockeyed optimist? Does that make me completely unrealistic? Does that make me someone who's drinking Donald Trump's Kool-Aid? According to a lot of people, yeah, it does. What we're talking about is Donald Trump's plan to do something that I don't usually approve of, and that is to get in the business of other countries. I like the idea of staying home, keeping to ourselves, causing as little trouble as possible around the globe, and kind of trying to figure things out here in our own backyard. That's what I like. But the idea that Donald Trump has this plan to get into the business of other countries and decriminalize homosexuality across the world is something I was like, all right, look, do I think that Donald Trump has the purest of motives to do this? Do I think that he had a burning desire when he got into office to decriminalize homosexuality around the globe? No. Do I think there's some sort of ulterior thing at work here? Very good chance there probably is. But let's talk for a second about what it's like to be gay in America. It's not an easy thing. Gay marriage was just legalized, and that is so beneath us. We as a country should have gotten there an awful long time ago. But it was just a few campaigns back where Hillary Clinton was like, no, I mean, like, I'm all in favor of homosexuality and people being people, but no, marriage is defined as between a man and a woman, and that wouldn't be okay. That was Hillary Clinton a few election cycles back. And I'm not saying that to pick on Hillary Clinton or her politics. I'm just using that to point out the fact that America, well, we're not as evolved in that respect as we ought to be. This idea of equality in terms of things like gay marriage is still a relatively new, shiny concept in America. And as such, there's pushback. As such, there's still people that, well, haven't accepted it as the normal. There's still people that see it as the new normal and they're uncomfortable with that. But this is still America. We're still way ahead of the curve when it comes to operating under the principle that folks should be treated equally, regardless of their gender, regardless of their sexuality, regardless of the color of their skin. The idea of equality is a fundamentally American thing, and it hasn't always been successfully upheld, and there's been massive teething problems along the way, and there's still a long way to go. But you know what? We're further along than other parts of the world. We really are. As much as things like gay marriage are still a relatively new and novel concept here in America, being gay in other parts of the world is no picnic. As much as it might not be easy here, it's something that can get you killed. It's something that can get you killed and arrested, stoned, hanged, beaten to death in other parts of the world. So why are gay people in America against the decriminalization of homosexuality around the globe? See if you can make sense of this.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So like I said, I just don't understand it. I don't understand the self-destructive nature of humanity, of America right now, to the point where you are willing to hurt yourself, hurt humanity, hurt untold numbers of people in the process, just for the sake of being right, just for the sake of some righteous indignation, just for the sake of some outrage. Like I said, I'm generally of the opinion that America should stay home more often. I'm of the opinion that we should stay out of the affairs of other countries. I'm of the opinion that nation building, generally speaking, doesn't, from a historical perspective, end well. I'm of the opinion that the less we're in the business of other countries, the less it's likely that they're going to want to do horrible things in the name of some religion and kill us. However, this idea of decriminalizing homosexuality around the globe is something that I think would be great if America led on. If we could lead by example, if we could lead by example of equality and justice for every man, woman, and child, regardless of their sexuality, regardless of their gender, color of skin, all of the above that we keep talking about over and over again. If we could lead, if we could be leaders for equality on a global scale, I have having a hard time with that. But you know who does have a difficult time with this? You know who does have who has a hard time with the fact that Trump's administration has launched a global campaign to end the criminalization of homosexuality in dozens of nations where it's still illegal to be gay? Freaking insane in 2019 that this exists anywhere in the world. But Out Magazine, the voice of, well, they consider themselves the voice of an LGBT publication, of the LGBT community. I don't know if they'll be considered that way after this. But they are one of the leading LGBT publications. They've been around for a very long time. And when we announced that there was going to be a global campaign to end the criminalization of homosexuality, when the American government said, hey, it's still illegal to be homosexual in some countries, and that's not okay. That's got to stop. Well, the folks over at Out Magazine attacked the initiative. Yeah, they attacked the initiative. And it's this unbelievable, rigid, inflexible way of opposing everything that the other side does. And this happens on the left, this happens on the right. But this is a really good indicator of where we are at the moment. This never-ending, unflinching belief that if someone who is of a different political party than you says it's white, then you say it's black. Just in principle. Because you can't be right about anything. You can't be good at anything. You can't, in any way, shape, or form, make sense if you're on the other side of the political fence. So stupid. But hold on. Getting all bent out of shape and getting ahead of myself. Out, leading LGBT publication, has attacked the initiative for being racist, saying, quote, "This decision is denoted in a colonial sense of paternalism rather than any true altruism." Now, like I said before, do I think that the motives Donald Trump has for wanting to decriminalize homosexuality around the globe are the purest? Do I think it's not a massive PR stunt? Do I think he really cares about this? Do I think that we heard any word of this while he was running for president? No, we didn't hear any word of this. Yes, there definitely is some sort of massive PR campaign at work here. But we take the rough with the smooth. They say President Trump's plan to decriminalize homosexuality across the world is racist because it's motivated by a colonial sense of paternalism. The folks over at Out Magazine have a problem with America doing what it can to decriminalize homosexuality around the globe because it'll pick on brown-skinned countries. Their words, not mine. Like Iran. And this is from Out Magazine. And this, well, it's just an indicator of where we're at. And I hate, oh my gosh, it's so unproductive. I hate it so much when people say, well, all they're doing is this. And if Obama said that, you'd be fine with it. Or all Trump's doing is that. And if Hillary Clinton said that, you'd be fine with it. Like that is, what would you call that? Whataboutism? It's the least productive type of dialogue that's happening right now. But I have to say, if Obama said we're going to decriminalize homosexuality around the globe, people would be all for it. But you know what? There's some things that aren't right. There's some things that aren't left. There's some things that are just the right thing to do. And standing up for equality, standing up for people that are gay, standing up for people that are LGBT and or Q, and saying they deserve to not have who they are be a crime is the right thing to do. Doesn't matter whose mouth it comes out of. It's right. Yet people want to shoot it down. Take the win. Take the win for humanity. Take the win for equality. Take the win on behalf of people who live in countries that can be jailed, put to death because of their sexuality. Suck it up and admit that maybe something that's coming from an administration that you abhor could, for whatever the hell reason, result in something good, and don't stand in the way of it. When Trump does something on the left, when Trump does something the left would normally applaud, they can't bring themselves to do it. And the same phenomena exists on the right. If Bernie Sanders suddenly started saying things that made sense to the average libertarian would have a hard time with it and wouldn't be able to be like, oh yeah, Bernie's so right. But like I said, when Trump does something the left would normally scream, clap, and cheer for, they just can't bring themselves to do it. Out Magazine says, rather than actually being about helping queer people around the world, the campaign looks more like another instance of the right using queer people as a pawn to amass power and enact its own agenda. The administration is trying to help gays in countries where they're stoned. Literally stoned. And yeah, there is some political gain. No one in the world, like all politicians, all of them are crooked and self-serving for the most part. They're doing something that looks charitable in order to further their own agenda and score points. Yeah, that's kind of what politics is. This exists on the left and the right. But this is something that I said, like I said, this could help gay people in countries where, because it's a crime to be gay, they are stoned or hanged or thrown in jail or literally thrown off of buildings. And Out took special exception to one U.S. ambassador who's openly gay, which surprised me.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950. Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland.
All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
You know, one of the things that I learned when I was a kid, or I learned from experiences I had when I was a kid, was that people get all bent out of shape about politicians and then they sort of settle down. Ronald Reagan did some fantastically unpopular things with the left when he was president. Ronald Reagan was seen by many as being a war criminal, as was George Bush Jr. and Sr. But it's so weird. When George Bush passed away, despite the fact that the left was willing to flay him alive as a war criminal during his time in office. The outpouring of, oh man, yeah, that guy was a really nice dude. He really cared. Not like the guy that's in office now. The outpouring of that sentiment from the left really kind of sort of taught me something. Like, I was a kid when Bush Sr. was in office. I was a very young adult when Bush Jr. was in office. And the contempt with which they were regarded by so many people I knew was really something. I remember I had a friend. I just moved to Houston, and he was coming to visit me in Houston. He was an older guy. He was, well, not older, but he was older than me. And so he took a very active interest in politics. He got very political. And I was like, I'm going to pick you up at the airport. There's 2 major airports in Houston. Which one are you flying into? And he was like, I can't even bring myself to say the name of it. I was like, what are you talking about? IH? Bush? He was like, yes, I'll be flying into Bush. Like, it really offended his delicate political sensibilities that he was going to fly into an airport named after a leader he found to be objectionable. He could barely bring himself to say the name of the airport. And cut to a little while ago when George Bush Sr. passed away, he was like, yeah, there went a guy that really cared about the American people. I was like, do you not remember? Do you not remember just a few short years ago when you couldn't bring yourself to say the name of the person that this airport was named after when you were telling me where you're flying into? How quickly we forget how angry we were not so long ago. And I guess that's sort of what makes me a little bit more ambivalent politically. I mean, one of the things that makes me a little bit more ambivalent politically, first and foremost, I mean, if you've listened to the show for any length of time, you've probably picked up on the fact that I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I don't buy into the idea of the party system. I don't think that politicians are that different. I think that if you stack presidents up next to each other and you examine their policies and their actions, well, they're going to be a lot more similar than you actually think. And there's going to we played this game on the show a little while back where we tried to we took the actions of Obama, George Bush Jr., and I think maybe Clinton, and played a little multiple choice game with regard to who did what, which policy sounded like it came from which side of the political fence. And I had some real political experts in the room when we played this game, and no one got them all right. We'll pull that out sometime and play that game again. But no one got them all right. There were things that Obama did that sounded distinctly Republican on the surface of things. There were things that Bush 1 and Bush 2 did that seemed quite liberal in the cold light of day, especially in the extremist world that we live in at the moment. So I kind of don't buy in it. I buy into all this stuff, all this brouhaha, all this hype. I see people getting all sorts of bent out of shape about the person in office, swearing that they're the Antichrist, that they're here to send us all to hell. In the case of my friend with George Bush Sr. And then I see a couple of years later, with the benefit of some hindsight and the ability to calm down a little bit and, well, recognition of the fact that the world didn't end, they can go, actually, he really did seem to care about people. Seemed like a nice guy. Didn't agree with him politically. Really hated some of the stuff he did, but ultimately, seemed like a good dude. And watching people jump from the extreme of he's a horrible, awful, evil person to he seemed all right in the space of a few years made me, I guess, as I was forming my adult opinions, go, you know what? Maybe everybody needs to calm down and recognize that we're probably sort of chill with each other more than we think we are. Politicians and the media don't help. They pit us against each other now more than ever before because there's better money to be made off of it. But I recognize that people go to extremes. I recognize that people settle down over time. And I recognize that people will oppose something somebody says just because it comes from the wrong side of the political fence, regardless of what it is they say. That's fine. That's just human nature. That's how we are. That's how we work. That's how we're wired. We're emotional, living in the moment types of creatures. And it's not always the most productive way to go through life, but because it's our nature, we have to sort of let it play out. I get that. I get that. But as much as that's sort of the norm, and as much as that's okay, and as much as we kind of have to accept that, most times, I have a much harder time accepting it when is potentially the difference between someone who is gay being persecuted as a criminal for it or not. You know, I think of all the entertainment types that have television shows or on the radio or on TV and movies, making documentaries, they have YouTube channels that do really well, or whatever. One of the people that I consistently have the most respect for is probably RuPaul. RuPaul has this show that is a hit show. It's been on for many seasons, Drag Race. And it's a drag queen competition. That's what it is. And it's just sort of something that's been on for so long that we've all sort of, accepted it. It gets big ratings. It makes excellent money. It's part of RuPaul's growing media empire. And that's amazing, and that's great, and that's an entertainment success and a business success and a multi-level media success. RuPaul has a podcast. RuPaul puts out records. RuPaul has television shows. RuPaul is a judge on other shows. RuPaul has live events for it. You really kind of can't stop the unstoppable juggernaut that is RuPaul and RuPaul's growing media empire. And you know what? We're all kind of sort of familiar with that. It's not new. But you go back to the beginning of the life of RuPaul, when RuPaul was a drag queen in a punk rock band in the South. Oh, wait, hold on. A black drag queen in a punk rock band in the South. This media empire, the millions upon millions of dollars that I'm sure RuPaul's Drag Race generates, that everything RuPaul does generates, came from one person in a very adverse set of circumstances that was willing to fight to be themselves. RuPaul, let me just say this again, was a drag queen in a punk rock band. A black gay drag queen in a punk rock band in the 70s in the South. This is someone who had to literally, physically fight just to be themselves. Unbelievable, and unbelievably sad that this would ever have to happen. But really was a pioneering trailblazer for equality in a way that, if I stop and think about it, will actually bring a tear to my eye. I'll get choked up thinking about what RuPaul and people like RuPaul had to go through just to be themselves. For me, it's easy. I'm a white, straight American guy. I never had to fight to be me. There have been fights, there have been struggles along the way in my personal story, of course, but I never had to fight for it to be okay to be me. I never had to walk down the street and get my ass kicked because of who I was. I never had to walk down the street in fear of getting beat up or thrown in jail because of who I was or how I was made. RuPaul did that. Others like RuPaul did that. But you know what? In other parts of the world, They're not there yet. They don't have that. You can still be killed. You can still be stoned to death. You can be thrown off buildings. You can be thrown in jail. You can be told that who you are at your core is illegal. You can be told that your very existence is a crime in other parts of the world. And if we can't stand up to that, for that, I shudder to think where we're going as a nation.
Now, more AD on the radio.
So I want to be very careful how I say this because I don't want to come across as presumptuous and I don't want to come across as ignorant. I mean, here's the thing though. I am ignorant when it comes to understanding what it is like to not be a straight white male in America. That's all I've ever been. I won a kind of genetic lottery in that I've never been persecuted for my sexuality. I've never been threatened for my sexuality. I've never been beaten for my sexuality. I've never been thrown in jail for it. I've never been stoned to death or thrown off a building, as you can still be in other parts of the world for my sexuality. So I don't know. I don't know what it is like to not be me. But I can tell you, when I've spoken with friends that are not like me, when I've spoken to friends that are part of the LGBTQ community, it's crazy. It's so beyond my form of comprehension. And I find it painful when I talk to some of my friends about this sort of thing. I have a friend, very powerful, very successful executive, that is gay and has had numerous fake relationships with women. Because despite the fact that it's 2019, he works in an industry where his sexuality wouldn't be, he thinks, tolerated. He has spent his entire professional life afraid to be himself because he thought it would get in the way of his career advancement. Like I said, very successful, very career-driven person. And I remember I was having dinner with him one night. I was like, hold on a second. You got fake girlfriends? He's like, yeah, it's horrible. I was like, it's really necessary? Like, you're really, really good at your job. You've been really good at your job for many years. You've made a lot of people a lot of money by being really sharp and really successful. And you think this could all come to a screeching halt if your coworkers found out that you were gay? He was like, maybe not now, but certainly on my way up. I was like, that's horrible. He was like, it's horrible. And that hurts. That hurts to know that my friend, someone who I love, someone who's been there for me, my friend has had to hide who he was. My friend has had to fight and work so much harder to get where he was going in life. And has had to deal with fear and shame at every turn. The shame part, he managed to let go of a little while ago. The fear part, not so much. And I have to tell you, that to me is a painful thing to hear. And I'm not even him. I've never had any experience remotely like that before in my life. But just as a person would have to go through this, that a person would have to hide who they were, hide who they loved, hide a massive part of their life and their identity to do the thing that they wanted to do professionally. If I stop and think about it, it'll move me to tears. And it doesn't have to be my friend. It doesn't have to be somebody I know. It doesn't have to be somebody I care about. If I think about anybody having to go through that, it'll move me to tears. It's a horrible thing. Horrible thing to be put in a position where you have to fight just to be yourself. Which is why I'm having such a hard time with this article that was written in Out. The folks that wrote this article in Out took special exception to the U.S. ambassador to Germany, a guy called Richard Grenell, who is openly gay. Out magazine wrote that Grenell's sudden interest in Iran's anti-gay laws is strikingly similar to Trump's rhetoric after the 2016 Pulse massacre in Orlando, Florida. After the deadly shooting, Trump used the deaths as a way to galvanize support for an anti-Muslim agenda rather than find a way to help support LGBTQ people. In pushing for immigration restrictions and a Muslim ban, Trump argued he was the true pro-LGBTQ candidate. This is Out, not me. Rather than honor those who died, Trump used the tragedy as a way to stoke fear among the American people, and Grenell is taking similar actions with Iran, trying to reach an economic goal by painting the administration's opponent as anti-gay. This is American politics. On both sides of the fence, there have been devious, underhanded things. Misrepresentations, soapboxing on principles that didn't really apply for political and financial gain. That's politics. That's why I don't trust or like politicians on either side of the political fence, because this is the world they inhabit. People say they're going to do things for one reason, and really they're doing it because it's convenient for them and they get a lot out of it. Shocker. Does Donald Trump really care about decriminalizing homosexuality around the world? Does this keep him up at night? If he stops and thinks about people that have to fight to be themselves the way I do, will he be moved to tears? Doubtful. But this guy, this openly gay man, Grenell, U.S. ambassador to Germany, who's taken a sudden interest, according to Out, in Iran's attitude toward homosexuality. What he's taking a stand against is the fact that back in 2016, Iran put a 19-year-old man to death for having gay sex because he was underage. So, if there's an opportunity for America to lead by example and to change the world in such a way, regardless of political intent, to where 19-year-olds that are in love with another 19-year-old that happens to be of the same sex won't be executed for being in love and for acting on that physically. If we as a nation have an opportunity to change that and we don't take it, then who are we?